Before I tell you what happened at that airport, let me say this clearly. When they called and said, "Come visit for Thanksgiving," they sounded warm, excited, insistent. It wasn't a casual invitation. It wasn't, "If you're free." It wasn't, "We'll see." It was, "It won't feel right without you, Mom." And at my age, when someone tells you you're wanted, not needed, not obligated, but wanted, you don't analyze the tone too carefully. You believe it. If you've ever booked a flight because someone said, "We can't wait to see you," and you chose to trust that warmth, "Stay with me," you'll understand why this story begins at an airport, but it doesn't end there. My name is Margaret Hale. I'm 68 years old. I live alone in a modest 2-bedroom house that still smells faintly of cedar and old paper. My husband passed 9 years ago. Since then, holidays have been quiet, sometimes peaceful, sometimes hollow. So when my son Andrew called 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, I noticed. Andrew doesn't call unless something is wrong or something is required. That's just his way. Text messages are easier for him, emails even safer. A phone call means effort. "Mom," he said, voice unusually bright, "what are you doing for Thanksgiving?" I told him the truth. I had planned to roast a small chicken instead of a turkey, easier for one person. I'd make mashed potatoes, maybe cranberry sauce from the jar if I felt ambitious. I might even bake a pie, though my wrists don't love rolling dough anymore. There was a pause on his end. "Well, Caroline and I were thinking," he continued, "the kids keep asking about you. It wouldn't be the same without you here." Wouldn't be the same. Those words have weight when you haven't heard them in a while. In the background, I heard Caroline's voice, light, polished. "Tell her we already set the table bigger this year," Andrew relayed it. "They want you here, Mom, really?" And I let myself believe that. I didn't ask who would book the ticket. I didn't ask if they'd pick me up. I didn't ask whether it was convenient. I simply said, "All right." That night, I booked the flight myself, nonstop, arriving at 3:10 p.m. on Thanksgiving Day. I paid a little extra for an aisle seat because my knees prefer space. I printed the boarding pass even though I didn't need to. Something about holding it in my hand made it feel more real. Over the next few days, I prepared carefully. I bought 2 small gifts, a puzzle for Noah, a watercolor set for Lily. I wrapped them neatly in brown paper tied with twine because I've always believed presentation matters. For Caroline, I picked up a box of imported dark chocolates she once mentioned liking. For Andrew, nothing material. I packed something else instead: softness, willingness. The kind of grace mothers carry long after it stops being reciprocated. The morning of the flight, I woke before sunrise. I dressed slowly, navy slacks, cream blouse, the wool coat that still holds its shape. I wanted to look like the kind of woman someone is proud to greet at arrivals. The airport was crowded in that festive, chaotic way only holidays create. Children dragging stuffed animals. Couples arguing softly over gate numbers. Older parents walking carefully with canes and carry-ons. I watched them all, and I allowed myself to imagine the moment. Andrew waving from the curb, Lily running forward first. Noah pretending not to be excited but smiling anyway. Caroline offering a polite hug and air-kissing the side of my cheek. It wasn't a fantasy. It was a memory replayed from years ago. The flight itself was uneventful. I read a few pages of a novel and stared out the window as we descended into a gray November sky. When we landed, I smoothed my blouse. It's funny the small things you do when you want to be received well. I walked through the terminal at a steady pace, suitcase rolling beside me. 3:16 p.m. I sent a text. "Landed. I'm at baggage claim near door C. Take your time." Warm, casual, no pressure. I waited. People were being claimed all around me. A teenage boy lifted off the ground by his grandmother's hug. A man holding a cardboard sign with his wife's name in red marker. 2 little girls screaming, "Dad," as they ran. I stood beneath the arrival sign, suitcase upright beside me. 5 minutes passed, then 10. At 3:32 I checked my phone again, no reply. I told myself Thanksgiving kitchens are chaotic. Turkeys burn, gravy curdles. Children spill things. At 3:40 I called Andrew. It rang 5 times. Voicemail. "Hi, sweetheart," I said lightly. "I'm here, just checking in." I ended the call before my voice could shift. At 3:47 I called again. No answer. This time I didn't leave a message. I moved toward the pickup curb. Cold air slid under my collar. The sky was heavy and dull, that Midwest gray that presses against your shoulders. Cars pulled up and pulled away in steady rhythm. Drivers stepped out to load bags, wave arms, hug tightly. I stood with my coat folded over one arm. I didn't sit down. Sitting felt like surrender. At 4:05 my phone buzzed, my heart lifted. But it wasn't Andrew. It was a notification, social media, I don't use it much, only to see photographs when they remember to post them. And there it was, a photo, Andrew at the head of the table, Caroline beside him, smiling wide. Noah holding up a fork dramatically, Lily mid-laugh, candles lit, turkey carved, plates already full. The caption read, "Grateful for our full table this year." Full, I stared at the image carefully. There was no extra chair. No empty place setting, no sense of waiting. Dinner wasn't running late, it had already happened. I checked the timestamp. 3:12 p.m. 2 minutes after my plane landed. That was when I noticed something no one else did, not a typo. Not a mistake, not confusion, intent. No frantic texts asking where I was, no missed calls from Andrew, no we're stuck in traffic. Just a dinner, posted publicly, complete. And I understood something in that moment that didn't require drama to process. I hadn't been forgotten. I had been managed, invited early enough to secure goodwill, ignored quietly enough to avoid confrontation, displayed online in absence. I stood there another minute, not out of hope but out of clarity. Then I pulled my coat on. I picked up my suitcase, and instead of waiting for them to explain, I turned toward the exit doors. The wind outside was sharper than before. It caught in my hair as the automatic doors slid closed behind me. I didn't cry. I didn't call again. But as I stepped off the curb and began walking toward the road instead of the pickup lane, I realized something had shifted. Because within minutes, the mood inside me changed. And I began to understand just how close I'd come, not to being stranded, but to remaining someone who would wait forever. I didn't know where I was going yet. But I knew one thing for certain, I would not be waiting when they finally decided to remember me. The first thing you notice when you stop waiting for someone is how quiet it becomes. Not outside, inside. The wind was sharp against my cheeks as I walked away from the pickup area. Cars kept circling behind me, engines humming, headlights blinking in polite impatience. But I didn't look back. When you look back, you give something one more chance to explain itself. I wasn't interested in explanations. My suitcase wheels rattled unevenly over the pavement. I hadn't planned for this. I hadn't booked a hotel. I hadn't even considered the possibility that I wouldn't be picked up. Because when someone says, "It won't be the same without you," you don't prepare for absence. You prepare for belonging. I walked until the noise of the arrival lanes faded behind me. About half a mile from the terminal, just past the car rental returns, I saw a small diner, the kind with fogged windows and a blinking neon sign that struggled to stay lit. The sign read, "Harvest Grill." It felt ironic enough to be honest. I pushed the door open. A bell chimed overhead. Inside, the air was warm and smelled faintly of coffee and fried onions. Vinyl booths lined the walls. A football game played silently on a television mounted above the counter. There were maybe 6 people inside. A truck driver in a reflective jacket, an older couple sitting close but not touching, a young waitress refilling salt shakers. She looked up and smiled. "Happy Thanksgiving," she said automatically. It startled me how simple kindness can land like something fragile. "Happy Thanksgiving," I replied. I slid into a booth near the window. My suitcase rested beside me like an obedient companion. "Kitchen's slow," the waitress said, handing me a menu. "But we've got turkey plates and pie." "Turkey," I almost laughed. "I'll take pie," I said. "And tea." She nodded. "Pumpkin or pecan?" "Pumpkin." She scribbled it down and disappeared behind the counter. I watched the condensation gather on the window. Outside, the sky had deepened into that early winter blue-gray that always feels heavier than it should. I turned my phone face down on the table. It buzzed once. Then again, I didn't look. For the first time in years, I didn't respond immediately. The pie arrived warm, imperfect, with a generous scoop of whipped cream sliding gently to one side. I picked up the fork slowly. The first bite tasted like cinnamon and something else. Independence, not defiance, not rebellion, just choice. I ate without rushing, without waiting for a call to interrupt me, without glancing at the door. When the waitress returned with the check, she hesitated. "You visiting family?" she asked. "I was," I said. She nodded in that way people do when they sense something and decide not to pry. "Well," she said lightly, "second slice is half price today." I considered it. Yes, I said finally. I'll take one to go, she smiled. Good choice. Outside, the air had turned colder. I stood there for a moment, holding the small white box of pie in one hand and my suitcase in the other. I could have ordered a ride. I could have called Andrew one more time. I could have messaged Caroline and said I saw the photo. But something inside me had settled. A calm. The kind that arrives when a truth is too clear to argue with. I booked a room at the nearest inn, nothing elegant, nothing sentimental. Just a place with heat and a lock. The Maple Crest Inn had faded siding and a small artificial wreath taped to the office door. The clerk barely looked up from his screen. One night, he asked. One night, I confirmed. Room 107. The carpet was patterned in muted browns, the bedspread floral. The heater rattled like it had a personal grievance. But it was warm, and it was mine. I set my suitcase down and sat on the edge of the bed. Only then did I turn my phone over. 6 missed calls from Andrew, 3 texts from Caroline, the most recent read, Mom, where are you? We've been trying to reach you. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I didn't understand it, because I did. There was no we're so sorry, no we made a mistake, no dinner got moved early and we panicked. Just where are you, as if I had vanished, as if I were the one who forgot. I opened the social media app again. The post had gained comments. Beautiful family, so grateful for gatherings like this. Love seeing everyone together, everyone. I zoomed in on the table. 4 plates, 4 glasses, 4 chairs. There had never been space for 5. I set the phone down, not angrily, not dramatically, just decisively. I took out my notebook, the small one I keep for grocery lists and quiet thoughts, and I wrote, I am not an afterthought. I stared at the sentence, then I added another. I will not beg for space at a table that was set without me. It didn't feel triumphant. It felt sober. That night I didn't cry, I expected to. I expected some wave of humiliation or heartbreak, but instead I felt something steadier, like a bone had shifted back into place. The next morning I woke before sunrise, old habits, the heater hummed. The room smelled faintly of motel soap. My phone buzzed again. Andrew, I answered this time. Mom, he said quickly, relief rushing through his voice. Where are you? We went to the airport and you weren't there. Did you? I asked calmly. Yes, around 5. We thought your flight was delayed. My flight landed at 3:10. There was silence. Then Caroline thought it was tomorrow. I sent the confirmation, I replied, another silence. I saw the photo, I added. He inhaled sharply. That was just we had to move dinner earlier because of the kids' schedule and no one thought to call me. It was chaotic, Mom. No, it was convenient. I'm fine, I said evenly. I booked a room. You're coming here now, right? The question wasn't affectionate, it was logistical. I looked around the small motel room, at the suitcase, at the notebook, at the pie box on the nightstand. No, I said. What do you mean no? I mean I'm not coming. Mom, don't be dramatic. Dramatic, the word slid between us like something misplaced. I'm not upset, I said, I'm just clear. He didn't know what to do with that. Can we talk about this? He asked finally. We just did. I ended the call gently, not abruptly, gently. I checked out an hour later. The clerk wished me a safe trip home. Home, that word felt different now. On the flight back, I stared out the window as the plane lifted into the clouds. I thought about the last few years, the birthday gifts mailed but never acknowledged, the late invitations. The way Caroline would say, we'll see, instead of yes. I thought about how often I had adjusted, how often I had told myself they're busy, they're overwhelmed. They mean well, meaning well and doing well are not the same thing. When we landed, my city greeted me quietly. No fanfare, no apology, just familiarity. As I unlocked my front door, the house smelled exactly as I'd left it, faint lavender and wood polish. I set my suitcase down. I hung up my coat. I stood in the center of the living room and listened to the silence. It wasn't lonely. It was honest. And that night, as I placed a single plate on my kitchen table and reheated leftover soup instead of turkey, I realized something else. This wasn't about Thanksgiving, this was about the pattern. And patterns once seen clearly cannot be unseen. The airport wasn't the moment I was abandoned. It was simply the moment I stopped pretending I wasn't. The strange thing about disappointment is that it doesn't always feel sharp. Sometimes it feels administrative, like paperwork, like something that requires signatures. The morning after I returned home, I woke up without heaviness in my chest. No dramatic grief, no urge to call Andrew back and demand a better explanation, just a quiet, steady awareness. I made my coffee the way I always do, 2 scoops, not one. Cinnamon, not sugar. I stood at the kitchen counter and watched the steam curl upward. For years, I had confused tolerance with love, tolerance of being rescheduled, tolerance of being forgot, tolerance of being understood but never prioritized. The airport had simply removed the illusion. My phone buzzed again. Andrew, then Caroline, then Andrew again. I let them ring. Not because I wanted to punish them, but because for once I wanted them to sit in uncertainty. The same uncertainty I had sat in beneath that arrival sign. After the third call, a text appeared. Andrew. Mom, please don't shut us out over a misunderstanding. The kids feel bad. The kids feel bad, not we are sorry, not we messed up. I read it twice. Then I set the phone down and reached for the small wooden box I keep in the sideboard drawer. Inside were documents, receipts, copies of checks, records I had never meant to examine too closely. For years I had helped, not extravagantly, not recklessly, quietly. The down payment when Andrew and Caroline bought their second home. The tuition shortfall when Noah switched schools. The temporary loan when Andrew's business slowed. Temporary is a generous word. I had never asked for repayment, not because I didn't need it, because I believed support strengthened family. But support without reciprocity becomes dependency. I spread the papers across the table. Line by line, I added the amounts in my notebook, not with anger, with clarity. By noon, the total sat there in neat black ink. It wasn't the number that unsettled me, it was the pattern. I had subsidized a life in which I did not have a seat. At 1:15 p.m., the phone rang again. This time I answered. Mom, Andrew began immediately. Why are you doing this? Doing what? Not responding, not telling us where you were. Caroline was worried sick. I let that settle for a moment. Andrew, I said calmly, you posted a photo of your Thanksgiving dinner at 3:12 p.m. Silence. You knew my flight landed at 3:10. We thought it was tomorrow. I forwarded you the confirmation. That must have gotten lost in the email thread. Lost like luggage, like elderly mothers. And no one thought to check before carving the turkey? His breath sharpened. You're twisting this. No, I said quietly. I'm finally seeing it straight. He shifted tactics. Mom, the kids keep asking why you left. I didn't leave. I was never picked up. Don't say it like that. Like what? Like we abandoned you? There it was, the word he couldn't say. I didn't respond, because silence is often louder than correction. Finally, he asked, what do you want? It was almost genuine. I want nothing, I said, and that unsettled him more than anger would have. That afternoon, I drove to the bank, not impulsively, deliberately. The branch manager, Elise Morneau, greeted me with the polite warmth reserved for longtime clients. Mrs. Hale, it's good to see you. I need to review my accounts, I said. All of them? She led me into her office, glass walls, soft chairs, neutral art. We went over every automatic transfer, every recurring payment. Andrew's monthly bridge assistance. Caroline's supplemental account for the children. Would you like to adjust these? Elise asked carefully. Yes, I said. Temporarily? No, she didn't ask why, she simply nodded. Effective immediately, effective immediately. There's something sobering about watching numbers stop. As if a faucet has been turned off. On the drive home, I didn't feel vindictive. I felt lighter. That evening, Caroline called. I answered. Margaret, she said, using my name in that softened tone she adopts when she wants something repaired. I think we need to clear the air. I agree, I said. I'm sorry if you felt overlooked. If Caroline, I said gently, I wasn't overlooked, I was excluded. That's not fair. It's accurate. She exhaled sharply. You know how chaotic holidays are. I know how intentional table settings are. That stopped her. She tried again. We assumed you'd understand. There it is, I replied. You assumed I would accept it. Another silence. You're making this bigger than it was, she said. No, I said calmly. I'm making it visible. Her tone cooled. The kids love you. I love them too. Then why are you punishing them? I'm not punishing anyone, I said. I'm adjusting my expectations, which is much more dangerous. That night I pulled out another folder, this one thinner, labeled Clara Bennett, my granddaughter from Andrew's first marriage. Clara had never forgotten to call. Never missed a birthday, never spoken to me like I was a task to manage. When I flew out for her college graduation, she met me at the gate, hugged me before I could reach for my suitcase. "Hi, Grandma," she'd said. "I've been watching the arrivals board." Watching, the word felt like sunlight. I picked up the phone and dialed her number. She answered on the second ring. "Grandma, I just wanted to hear your voice." She laughed softly. "Are you okay?" "Yes," I said. "I am." We spoke for 20 minutes about her classes, about her apartment, about nothing urgent. And when we hung up, I felt something steady again, not chosen out of obligation. Chosen out of affection. The next morning, I called my attorney. Mr. Warren Cole had handled my estate planning for years. "I need to make changes," I told him. "Significant ones?" he asked. "Yes." We scheduled a meeting. As I hung up, I realized something simple but profound. They thought the airport was the injury. It wasn't. The injury was cumulative. The airport was simply the moment I stopped anesthetizing it. By the time Andrew realized something had shifted, the change was already in motion, and this time I wasn't asking for a seat. I was building a different table entirely. There's a particular kind of calm that comes after a decision has already been made. Not announced, not defended, just made. By the time I walked into Mr. Warren Cole's office that Tuesday morning, I wasn't angry anymore. Anger is loud, it demands witnesses, it burns energy. What I felt was steadier than that. Resolved. Warren's office hasn't changed much in the 12 years I've known him. Same dark wood shelves, same brass lamp on the corner of his desk. Same framed photograph of a lake he says he fishes at every summer but never seems to actually visit. He stood when I entered. "Margaret," he said warmly, "you sounded serious on the phone." "I am," I replied, taking the seat across from him. He folded his hands, waiting. "I want to restructure my estate," I said, "fully." He didn't blink. That's what I appreciate about Warren. He has seen every version of family fracture possible. "Tell me what's changed," he said gently. I considered the question. "Nothing," I said. "That's the problem." I told him about the flight, about the landing time, about the photo. I did not dramatize it. I simply described it. Warren listened without interrupting. When I finished, he asked only one thing. "And this was the moment you decided?" "No," I said quietly. "It was the moment I admitted what had been happening for years." He nodded slowly. "All right. What would you like to do?" I leaned back in the chair. "Remove Andrew and Caroline as primary beneficiaries." Warren's pen paused over his legal pad. "And replace them with Clara." He wrote her name down carefully. "You're certain?" "Yes. And the grandchildren, Noah and Lily?" I took a breath. "I will leave them modest education trusts, structured, controlled, but nothing discretionary." "And Andrew," I almost smiled. "He's had discretionary for 15 years. Warren's expression softened slightly. "Understood." We spent the next hour reviewing every account. The house, the investment portfolio, the retirement funds. Warren recommended placing everything into a protected trust with Clara as sole executor upon my passing. "You retain full control while living," he clarified. "No one can override that." "That's the point," I said. He hesitated, then asked gently, "Do you anticipate pushback?" "Yes," I said simply. "Are you prepared for it?" "I am." The paperwork would take a few days to finalize, but the intention was set. As I stood to leave, Warren looked at me over the rim of his glasses. "This isn't revenge, is it?" "No," I said. "It's correction." That afternoon, Andrew called again. I let it go to voicemail. He left a message this time. "Mom, I just got a call from the bank. They said the transfers were suspended. What's going on?" It begins." I waited until evening to call him back. He answered immediately. "Mom, yes. Why did you stop the transfers?" "Because they were voluntary. That money helps with the kids' activities." "I've helped with the kids' activities for a decade." "That's not the point." "No," I said calmly. "It is." There was a long pause. "You're punishing us over Thanksgiving." "I am adjusting support based on long-term behavior." "That's corporate language," he snapped. "It's accurate language." His frustration sharpened. "You think we did this intentionally?" "Yes." The word hung there. "You really believe that?" "Yes." Silence again, then softer, almost defensive. "It was chaotic." "Caroline thought." "Caroline thinks carefully," I interrupted gently. "So do you." He didn't deny it. He changed the subject. Is this about money now? It's about respect, I said. We respect you. No, I replied, you manage me. That stung. I could hear it in the way he exhaled. You're overreacting? No, I said. I'm reacting proportionally for the first time. Another shift. Are you planning to change your will? He asked. There it was, the real concern. I've already met with Warren. The silence on the other end grew heavier. You didn't. I did. For God's sake, Mom. Irene, he corrected himself, catching the edge in his tone. Margaret, I said quietly. You can call me Margaret. That landed harder than anything else. He didn't speak for a full 5 seconds. You're serious, he said finally. Yes. You'd cut us out over one holiday? I'm not cutting you out over one holiday, I said steadily. I'm restructuring my life because of a pattern. And Clara benefits? She shows up. That's unfair. It's observable. He ran a hand through his hair. I could hear it in the rustle. She's just more sentimental. She's more present. He tried one last angle. The kids will notice. Yes, I said, they will. And you're okay with that? I'm okay with teaching them that love and entitlement are not the same thing. He had no response to that. Finally, he muttered, Caroline isn't going to take this well. I'm not responsible for Caroline's comfort. That ended the call. Later that evening, Caroline texted, This feels extreme. We can fix Thanksgiving. Why are you escalating? I read it twice. Then I replied, I'm not escalating, I'm concluding. She didn't answer. The next day, I received a call from Clara. Grandma, she said, Dad sounds tense. I smiled softly. Does he mention something about you making changes? I am. There was a pause. You don't have to tell me what, she said gently. I just want you to know I'm not part of any sides. I know, I said. I don't want you hurt. I'm not hurt, I replied. I'm aware. She was quiet for a moment. Can I come visit next weekend? You don't need a reason, I said. I just want to see you. That was enough. After we hung up, I walked through my house slowly. The living room, the kitchen, the hallway lined with framed photographs. For years, I had kept my door open to people who treated it like a revolving entrance. Now I was choosing who crossed the threshold. That night, as snow began falling lightly against the windows, I made tea and sat by the fire. Not angry, not triumphant, just steady, because Andrew thought the airport was the turning point. It wasn't. The turning point was the moment I realized I didn't need to be invited to belong. And once that realization settles, everything else becomes paperwork. What Andrew didn't understand yet was this: I wasn't taking something away from him. I was protecting something he had already lost. The interesting thing about boundaries is this: the moment you draw one, people who benefited from the absence of it will call you cruel. By Thursday morning, Andrew wasn't just tense. He was strategizing. I could feel it. There are certain rhythms you recognize after 42 years of being someone's mother. The tones shift, the forced calm, the sudden politeness layered over urgency. At 10:12 a.m., my doorbell rang, not a tentative ring, a firm one. I didn't rush. I finished pouring my tea, set the kettle down, and walked to the door at my own pace. Andrew stood there, hands in his coat pockets, jaw tight. Behind him, in the passenger seat of the car, I could see Caroline. She didn't get out, of course she didn't. Mom, Andrew said. Margaret, I corrected gently. He inhaled slowly, recalibrating. Can we talk? We are inside. I studied his face for a moment. He looked older than he had last week. Stress does that. I stepped aside. He entered cautiously like a guest who wasn't sure he still had keys. We sat across from each other in the living room. The fire was already lit. The house was warm. He glanced around. You redecorated. No, I said. You just haven't noticed things in a while. That landed. He leaned forward. Okay, I'm not here to fight. Good, but I need to understand what's happening. You do understand. He shook his head. No, I don't. You stopped the transfers. You met with Warren. You're rewriting everything over one mistake. I didn't interrupt. He continued. You've never been like this. That's true, I said calmly. I've never enforced consequences before. His mouth tightened. Consequences? We're not children. No, I said quietly. You're adults who behave like children when it comes to money. That stung. I could see it in the way his posture stiffened. That's not fair. It's accurate. He stood up abruptly and began pacing. You think we use you? I know you rely on me. That's different. Not when reliance replaces responsibility. He stopped pacing. You offered to help? Yes, I said. I offered help, not dependency. He rubbed his forehead. This is extreme, is it? Yes, you're dismantling the entire family structure. No, I said. I'm removing myself from being its foundation. He looked at me then, really looked. And for a second, just a second, I saw the 10-year-old boy who used to sleep with his head against my chest because my heartbeat made storms quieter. Why didn't you tell us you felt like this? He asked, softer now. I held his gaze, because I didn't feel it clearly until the airport. That silenced him. He knew exactly what I meant. You could have called, he muttered. I did, he swallowed. We were busy. Yes. The word wasn't sharp, it was final. He sat back down. What do you want from us? He asked. It was an honest question. For the first time since Thanksgiving, it wasn't about the money. I don't want anything, I said. Then why are you doing this? Because I realized something. And what's that? That I was the only one afraid of losing this relationship. He blinked. That's not true, isn't it? Silence again. Caroline's silhouette shifted in the car outside. She's worried too, he said defensively. She's worried about stability. That's what families do, they care about stability. No, I said, they care about people. Stability is secondary, he exhaled sharply. So Clara just wins, this isn't a competition. It feels like one. That's because you're measuring. His jaw tightened again. She's younger. She doesn't understand long-term responsibility. She understands presence. That's sentimental. It's foundational. He looked exhausted now. You're going to regret this, he said quietly. Perhaps, I replied. But I regret more the years I ignored what was obvious. His voice dropped. You'd really leave everything to Clara? Yes. And the kids? They will have structured support. That's not the same. No, I agreed. It isn't. He stood again. So what now? We just accept it? You decide how you want to show up in my life, and if we don't, then nothing changes. He stared at me. You're serious. I am. There was no anger in the room. No shouting, just the steady hum of a relationship recalibrating under pressure. After a long moment, he walked toward the door. At the threshold, he turned. Caroline thinks you're manipulating this to make a point. I smiled faintly. I am making a point. And what's that? That I'm not spare. He didn't respond. He walked back to the car. Caroline didn't look at the house as they drove away. That afternoon, my phone buzzed. A message from Caroline. We're disappointed. We thought family meant forgiveness. I read it once. Then I replied, family means accountability. She didn't respond. That evening, Clara called. I heard Dad went over. He did. Are you okay? I'm steady. There was a pause. I don't want to be the reason this gets worse, she said quietly. You're not the reason, I said. You're the clarity. She was quiet for a long moment. I love you, she said. I know. After we hung up, I sat by the window. Snow was falling again, softer this time. The house didn't feel empty. It felt defined. For years, I mistook being needed for being valued. They are not the same thing. And Andrew still believed this was about inheritance. He still believed it was about money. He didn't yet understand that what I withdrew wasn't financial support. It was access. Access to automatic forgiveness. Access to assumed loyalty. Access to a woman who would always make room at the table even when there was none for her. What Andrew didn't realize yet was that the next conversation wouldn't be about money at all. It would be about something far more uncomfortable. Respect. There's a particular kind of quiet that settles after confrontation, not the fragile kind, the grounded kind. The house felt different after Andrew left that afternoon, not tense, not heavy, just clarified. Like furniture had been moved and finally made sense. By Sunday, the calls had stopped. No more "we're worried." No more "let's talk." Silence. And I welcomed it. Monday morning, I made oatmeal, sliced a pear into it, and sat at the kitchen table without checking my phone first. That alone felt revolutionary. At 9:03 a.m., the phone rang. Not Andrew, not Caroline. Clara. Morning, she said softly. Morning. Dad called me. I assumed he might. He said you've cut him out. I stirred my tea slowly. I haven't cut anyone out. That's what I told him. And he said you're being influenced. I smiled faintly. By whom? A pause. By me. There it was, the old family reflex. If something shifts, blame the quiet one. Clara, I said gently, I've been making financial decisions since before you were born. I know. He's uncomfortable. He's scared, she corrected. I didn't argue. Fear often disguises itself as anger. What are you going to do? She asked. I already did it. You finalized everything? Warren is drafting the final language this week. Another pause. Are you sure? She asked, and there was no greed in her voice, only concern. I'm sure, she exhaled slowly. I don't want to lose Dad over this. You won't, I said, if he chooses not to lose you. That was the difference now. Choice. For decades, I had smoothed tension before it hardened. Now I let it sit. That afternoon, I received an email. From Andrew. Subject line, we need mediation. I opened it. He had written 3 paragraphs, carefully composed, neutral tone, suggesting we meet with a neutral financial advisor to ensure fairness. Fairness. Interesting word. I closed the email and didn't reply. Instead, I called Warren. They're pushing for mediation, I said. That's expected, Warren replied calmly. When access feels threatened, negotiation becomes urgent. I'm not negotiating. I know. Am I exposed legally? No, he said. You're entirely within your rights. Good. Margaret, he added gently, are you prepared for emotional escalation? I paused. Yes. Because this wasn't about money anymore. It was about control shifting. Tuesday evening, just after dusk, there was another knock at my door. I didn't check the window first. I already knew. Andrew, alone this time. I opened the door. I won't come in, he said immediately. Good. We stood on the porch. Cold air between us. You ignored my email, he said. Yes. Why? Because I'm not interested in mediation. He shook his head slightly. You're being unreasonable. I'm being decisive. This affects all of us. It affects my estate, which affects us. Yes, I agreed. Consequentially, not contractually. He looked tired, more tired than angry. Do you think I don't love you? He asked suddenly. The question caught me off guard. I think, I said slowly, that you're used to me being available. That's not the same. No. It isn't, he swallowed. You could have talked to me before making this public. I did, I said, when, at the airport. He closed his eyes briefly. Mom, Margaret. He inhaled sharply but corrected himself. Margaret, that was a mistake. Yes, one mistake. No, I said quietly. It was a pattern finally visible. The porch light hummed above us. Somewhere down the street, a car door slammed. I didn't think you'd take it this far, he admitted. And I didn't think you'd leave me waiting. We stood there in that truth, neither dramatic, neither loud, just honest. Caroline thinks Clara manipulated you, he said again. She didn't. You've always defended her. I've always seen her. He stared at me. She doesn't need the money. That's precisely why she won't destroy herself over it. He flinched. That one landed. You think I would? I think you already have chasing stability you can't afford. Silence. The cold deepened. I didn't realize how much we depended on you, he said finally. Dependency isn't love. No, he agreed. It's not. For the first time, there was no defensiveness, just clarity. What would it take? He asked. For what? For you to reconsider. I didn't answer immediately because the truth was uncomfortable. It would take you not asking me that. He blinked. You want me to not care? I want you to care about me, not the outcome. He looked down at the porch steps, then back up. Is there a way back from this? Yes, I said. But it's not through paperwork. He waited. Show up, I said simply. How? Without an agenda. The wind shifted. He nodded slowly. I don't know if Caroline will go along with this. That's between you and your wife. He hesitated. Are you really leaving everything to Clara? Yes. And that's final? Yes. He looked like he might argue again, but he didn't. Okay, he said quietly, not acceptance, not agreement, but acknowledgement. He stepped backward off the porch. I don't know how this ends, he said. I do, I replied gently. How, with everyone exactly where they choose to stand? He didn't respond. He walked to his car. This time he didn't rush away. He sat there for a moment before starting the engine. I stayed on the porch until his headlights disappeared. Inside, the house felt steady, not triumphant, not victorious. Steady. Later that night, Clara called again. Did he come over? Yes. How was it? Honest. Angry? No, she exhaled. Do you feel bad? I thought about that carefully. No, I said, I feel awake. That was the difference. For years, I had drifted inside the role of mother, provider, fixer, safety net. Now I was awake inside my own name. Margaret Hales, not spare, not optional, not automatic. And Andrew still believed there might be room to negotiate. What he didn't realize was this: the money had already moved. The trust was nearly sealed, but more importantly, the emotional ledger had closed. Andrew thought this was the turning point. He was wrong, because the next move wouldn't come from him, it would come from someone neither of us expected. Perfect. This gives me the exact emotional temperature. The next move didn't come from Andrew, it came Thursday morning. At 10:17 a.m., my doorbell rang, not a knock this time, a firm, deliberate press. I wasn't expecting anyone, but I wasn't surprised either. When control shifts, people who benefited from the old structure begin to feel it in their bones. I opened the door. Caroline stood there, alone. Her posture was immaculate, coat tailored, hair smoothed into place, lipstick precise. She had dressed for composure, not comfort. "Margaret," she said, her voice even. "Caroline?" We held eye contact for 3 seconds longer than politeness required. "I'd like to talk," she said. "You may." She stepped inside without waiting for a formal invitation. That told me everything. We moved to the living room. She chose the armchair, not the sofa. Strategic distance, controlled positioning. I remained standing for a moment before sitting opposite her. The house was quiet. She glanced around. "You've made things very difficult," she began. "For whom? For everyone?" "No," I said calmly. "For expectations?" Her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Andrew is under enormous pressure," she continued. "This decision affects his future. It affects my estate. It affects our family. Your family will survive without my accounts." The air sharpened. "You don't understand what you're doing," she said. "I understand precisely." She leaned forward slightly. "Clara is 22? Yes. She doesn't have the experience to manage that kind of responsibility." "She has integrity," I replied. "Which is rarer." That landed. Caroline exhaled slowly. "This feels punitive." "It isn't." "Then what is it?" "Alignment," she blinked. "With what?" "With truth." There it was again, that uncomfortable word. She shifted in her seat. "You've always been generous," she said. "Reliable. We built plans assuming that I would continue." "Yes, and you never thought to ask whether I wished to." Silence. Her composure flickered for half a second. "Families rely on each other," she said. "They do. You're withdrawing. I'm redefining." Her gaze hardened. "This will create resentment." It already existed. She didn't expect that. "You think we resent you?" she asked. "I think you resented needing me." That one hit. She looked away briefly. "You're rewriting history," she said. "No," I replied gently. "I'm remembering it clearly." The room felt colder now, not emotionally, just structurally. Caroline stood. "So this is final?" "Yes." "You won't reconsider?" "No, you're choosing Clara over your son. I'm choosing steadiness over dependency." She crossed her arms. "She doesn't even need it." "Exactly." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You're punishing us." "No," I said. "I'm removing leverage." That ended it, because she understood leverage. She stood there for a moment, recalculating. "This will change things," she said finally. "Yes." "You're comfortable with that?" "Yes." She picked up her handbag. Andrew didn't send her, I realized. She came because she felt the shift, because she understood the implications before he did. At the door, she paused. "You're not the woman I married into," she said. "No," I agreed. "I'm the woman who stopped shrinking." She left without another word. I closed the door gently, not triumphantly, gently. And then I stood there in the quiet. The house didn't tremble. The walls didn't crack. Nothing collapsed. Which told me everything I needed to know. If my withdrawal could destabilize them, then the structure was never balanced to begin with. That evening, I didn't call Clara, I didn't call Warren, I made dinner, simple, soup and bread. I set one place at the table, and I noticed something. For the first time in years, I did not feel guilty, not for holding boundaries. Not for protecting what I built, not for refusing negotiation disguised as love. The next morning, Andrew called. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times, then I answered. "Margaret?" His voice sounded different, tighter. "She came over," he said. "Yes. What did you say to her?" "The same thing I said to you." Silence. "She's furious. That's her choice. You've drawn a line." "Yes." He inhaled slowly. "She thinks you're trying to divide us." "I'm trying to stop dividing myself." Another pause. "She said you called our stability dependency." "I did. That was harsh." "It was accurate." The quiet stretched. "You really won't reconsider," he said. "No, even if it means distance?" "Yes." He exhaled, long, tired. "I don't know how to fix this." You don't fix this, I said calmly. You decide who you want to be inside it. There it was, the crossroads, not financial, personal. He didn't answer. After a moment he said, I'll call you later. Okay, he hung up. I sat at the table with my tea cooling beside me. Caroline had made her move. Andrew had reacted. But neither of them had yet understood something essential. This wasn't about inheritance. It was about identity. And when a mother steps out of automatic availability, the adult children must decide whether they still know how to show up without transaction. That afternoon, the first snowfall began. Soft, unannounced. I watched it through the kitchen window, white covering brown, quiet over noise, and I realized something. The emotional ledger had closed, but a new page had opened. Not for negotiation, for choice. And someone was going to make one. The next knock wouldn't be calculated. It wouldn't be strategic. It would be honest. And when it came, I would finally know whether Andrew had understood what I meant. Snow fell the night Clara came home again. Not the dramatic kind. Not a storm, just a steady, quiet layering, the kind that softens edges and makes everything look briefly untouched. She arrived just before dinner, boots dusted white, cheeks flushed from the cold. I saw her from the front window before she knocked, and for a moment I just stood there watching her approach the porch like someone returning, not visiting. That difference matters. I opened the door before she could reach for the bell. You didn't have to stand in the snow, she said. I wasn't standing, I replied. I was waiting. She smiled at that, not the polite kind, the real one. Inside, the house smelled like rosemary chicken and warm bread. I had set 2 plates this time, 2 glasses, 2 cloth napkins, not because I was hoping someone else would appear, but because Clara was here by choice. We ate slowly. Talked about small things first, her final semester, a professor who assigns too much reading, the train ride in. Eventually, she looked at me carefully. Dad called again, she said. I assumed he might. He asked if I'd convinced you. Convinced me of what? To undo everything. I poured her more water. And what did you tell him? That I didn't have to convince you of anything. Good, she hesitated. Are you angry at him? I thought about that. No, disappointed? Yes, she nodded, absorbing that. He said you've changed. I leaned back in my chair. No, I said quietly. I stopped adjusting. That lingered between us. Later, we moved to the living room. The fire cracked gently in the hearth. Clara curled up in the corner of the couch, exactly the way she used to when she was 14, one leg tucked under, fingers absent-mindedly twisting the edge of a throw blanket. Grandma, she said softly, if he shows up tomorrow, what happens? Then he shows up. And if he apologizes, then I listen. And if he doesn't, then I don't move. She studied me for a long moment. You're not scared of what? Being alone. I smiled gently. I've been alone in a room full of people, I said. That's far lonelier. She didn't argue. That night after she went to bed, I stood by the kitchen sink watching the snow gather on the porch railing. For the first time in years, I wasn't bracing for something. No holiday expectations. No financial requests, no last-minute guilt, just quiet. The next morning at 10:14 a.m. the knock came, 3 firm raps. Clara appeared at the hallway doorway, eyes alert. Do you want me to answer? She asked. No, I walked to the door myself. Andrew stood there, no Caroline this time, no polished speeches prepared by someone else, just him. His shoulders looked smaller somehow, not defeated, just stripped of performance. Can I come in? He asked. Yes. We moved into the living room. Clara stayed in the kitchen, not hiding, not intruding, simply present. Andrew noticed her immediately. Hi, he said. Hi, she replied calmly. He turned back to me. I didn't sleep, he said. That's not unusual during discomfort. He nodded faintly. I've been thinking. Good. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture he's had since childhood when something unsettled him. I thought this was about money, he said. It isn't. I know that now. Silence. He looked around the room. It's strange, he said. This house feels the same. It is. But I don't. That caught my attention. He exhaled slowly. When you stopped answering, I realized something, he continued. You've always answered? Yes, no matter what. Yes. And I relied on that. Yes. Another silence, not tense, honest. I left you at that airport, he said quietly. Not physically, but emotionally. Yes. His jaw tightened. I didn't think you'd notice. I held his gaze. That's the problem. Clara stepped into the room then, not to intervene, but to stand beside me. Andrew saw her, really saw her. You showed up, he said to her. Yes, she replied. He nodded slowly. I should have. Yes. No hostility in her tone, just fact. He turned back to me. I'm not asking you to undo anything, he said finally. Good. I'm asking if I can rebuild something. The room felt still. You don't rebuild by negotiating inheritance, I said. I know. You rebuild by consistency. I can try. I studied him. Trying is not a promise, but it is a beginning. The trust stands, I said. I know. You won't have access to it. I know. And Clara remains the sole beneficiary. He swallowed but nodded. Yes. Clara shifted slightly beside me, uncomfortable with the weight of it being spoken aloud. This isn't punishment, I added. I understand. Good, he took a breath. Caroline won't like this. That's not my responsibility. No, he agreed, another pause. Can I come for dinner next Sunday? He asked, not a demand. Not an expectation, a question. Yes, I said. He blinked. Just dinner, no agenda, no agenda, he nodded. Okay. He stood then, awkward but lighter somehow. At the door, he hesitated. I didn't mean to make you feel disposable. I met his eyes. You didn't mean to notice. He accepted that. When he left, the snow had stopped. The world looked quiet and new. Clara turned to me. Was that progress? Yes. Are you sure? I am, she smiled faintly. Grandma, yes, I'm proud of you. That one landed deeper than she knew. That evening we made soup together, lentils again, carrots, garlic, rosemary, simple, steady. At the table I lit 2 candles, not in defiance, not in ceremony, just because the light was warm. And as we sat there, bowls in hand, the house felt balanced. Not healed, not restored to what it once was, but balanced. Andrew would have to decide who he wanted to be without my money cushioning his choices. Caroline would have to decide whether pride was worth distance. Clara would move forward carrying something different, not just assets, but intention. And me. I would remain exactly where I was, in my house, in my name, in my clarity, because Thanksgiving had not been the moment I was abandoned. It had been the moment I woke up. And sometimes the most powerful move you make is simply not waiting anymore. If this story felt familiar, if you've ever stood somewhere waiting to be chosen, remember this. You don't have to beg for a seat at someone else's table. You can set your own, and it will be enough.